Now, civil society organizations are joining forces to promote accountability this Youth Month amongst police officers. They say that public trust in the police is essential if they are to be effective in reducing crime. The honest members of the force are let down, though, by their colleagues who are brutal or corrupt. Very few are held to account. So listen to some of these stats. Since 2012, nearly 15,000 cases have been opened with the watchdog body IPID involving claims of assault or torture. In less than 200 cases, officers have lost their jobs. To discuss, we're joined by David Bruce, who's an independent researcher looking at policing and crime. We're also joined by Edwin Makwati, who is an accountability researcher at the Legal Resources Centre. Let me start with you, Mr. Bruce. It sounds pretty scary, and I think many South Africans, especially amongst women, the feeling is they don't have comfort when they're pulled over by police. They don't always feel that the process, the questioning will be fair and that they're in safe hands. Is that a fair assessment? Just talk about the scale of the problem here.
Right, okay. Well, I mean, I think it's very difficult to generalize because I think, as you've said, there are many police officers who are take their job seriously and are trying to do the best in terms of providing an effective service to people. However, at the same time, there is a serious problem clearly in South Africa, which takes various forms. On the one hand, you have forms of kind of police violence, people being assaulted. You have problems on the terrain of public order policing with problems such as misuse of rubber bullets. And then you also have a problem of corruption and police trying to kind of take advantage of their position of power to enrich themselves. So, so I would caution against, generalizing about, all police in South Africa, because but there is, clearly a serious and quite widespread problem of forms of abuse by the police.
Mr. Makwati, maybe we can't generalize about police officers themselves, but there's clearly a problem here with accountability. Do you agree?
I think the issue of generalization is one thing that is maybe problematic, because we don't want to look like we're attacking the police. But at the same time, if the problem is systemic, it's a difficult exercise to try and pick up who is the good police officer and who is not. We need to root out the problem in its totality. The problem is systemic rot, where police violate the rules that apply to policing in a civil society, in a democratic society. And then when they do that, there's no accountability. In fact, there's more effort to cover up what the wrongs the police are doing than to make sure that they're accountable. Just a few weeks ago, there was an article on Roundup, I think, which spoke of police cover-ups, or where police beat people, torture people with impunity. And then within the system itself, the people who should be taking accountability or trying to make sure that the perpetrators are brought to justice make all efforts within their power to ensure that there's no such accountability. Police are able to willy-nilly disregard the recommendations of IPID regarding the discipline of officers in the internal departmental processes. And secondly, they give some laughable sanctions against police who commit serious crimes against people, e.g. verbal warnings or simply a small fine, that do not reflect the gravity of the crime.
Well, Mr. Makwati, after that report, I actually spoke to IPID, and it was interesting to hear where their power sort of starts and ends, so they can investigate. Then they can recommend that a police officer undergoes a disciplinary hearing. But then, like you say, that goes back to the police officer's superiors who may like him. Does it sound to you like there's whole-scale protection of corrupt cops here by their superiors?
Look, I can only speak from experience. From what I've seen, there is no accountability at all. I mean, I've dealt with these cases for quite a number of years now, and I've not found a single case in all the cases I've dealt with myself where there is an effort at all There's always this more like you are an enemy of the department or the top brass when you try to say, hey, this police officer did 1, 2, 3, take action. And for me, that is something that should be expected when you create an oversight body and deliberately cripple it so that you are seen to be doing the right thing, but you don't intend to do the right thing. The reason IPID was created was to take away the oversight role from the police themselves. No, you cannot create IPID and still IPID has to make recommendations to the same culprits. So IPID should not be made to make recommendations to the people who committed the crime to take action against themselves. So the issue of oversight should be totally out of the police hands. I cannot be expected as IPID, if I'm IPID, to make recommendations to the police to punish their own people. Yeah. So once IPID has made investigations and found that the police are culpable in that particular instance, there should be a separate body from the police who should be doing the oversight, because that's the reason IPID was created in the first place. Then if you make them go back to the police to say, okay, take this action, you are undoing the good faith with which IPID was created, if indeed it was created in good faith. So it's something that should be expected if bodies are created and deliberately crippled by the same people that created them.
Mr. Bruce, do you agree if the cops are protecting their own, should there be another body that enforces sanctions on corrupt officers?
You see, I must say that I disagree on some levels. On the one hand, we need to recognize that there are two types of recommendations that IPID can make, and insofar as they make recommendations for criminal prosecution of a police officer, that then is something that rests with the National Prosecuting Authority rather than with the SAPS itself. It's when they make recommendations for disciplinary action to be taken that there is a reliance on the police's own disciplinary system for disciplinary measures to be put into force. So, my understanding of it is that this is about greater transparency on the part of the disciplinary system, and strengthening the police disciplinary system.
Well, you've
but
raised
I think
you've raised something interesting, and we're running out of time. So I want to ask you: are the prosecutions happening if there are cases of assault or torture, and those are handed over to the National Prosecuting Authority? Well, the statistics are not very impressive. There are not a large number of prosecutions, and particularly in some of the most serious types of cases. So, for instance, in relation to allegations of torture, rates of prosecution are incredibly low. There also seems to be a problem in translating those types of recommendations into actual accountability. So it is not exclusively a problem with the police disciplinary system, and it would seem to be a range of different issues that need to be attended to. All right. I hope we can chat again. Mr. Makwati, you were talking about a systemic problem, and I think we need to expand this. Why is there that problem? Well, what is it in what the officers earn, the training? But that's a bigger issue for another day. Thank you for laying the stats out. Very low accountability for police officers. David Bruce, independent researcher there, and Edwin Makwati, researcher at the Legal Resources Centre.